Okay. Sorry that I forgot to turn the volume down on the music, on the stuff. I didn't realize that it was all the way maxed up from the article that we were doing last. Sorry everyone, I'm still just trying to figure out what's going on. None of this is what I want. None of this is what I want. That's where I'm gonna want in a minute, but not yet. Hey, and my closed captions are working, and my thing is still not. Is it? Well, I don't know. It did something. Something did something. Why does this keep moving? No, it didn't. Something was doing this last time too. I think it's Windows trying to be helpful, and I wish it would stop. YouTube. Okay, we are live. We can put this over here. This is live. This is good. This is all stuff for later. I'll have to leave this up because I'll need it because I'm not organized yet. It's okay. It's okay that I'm not organized because I know what we want to do today. We have a clear plan of what we want to do today already, so there's not a whole lot of figuring out I need to do yet. Right now the hang up is for some reason I'm still not able to get the chat, the YouTube. Hey, it finally woke up. And I just had to tell it the same thing 12 different times. And this is one of the funny things. Hold on. Here, let me. Well, no, it's okay. Okay, I think that we're back. Yeah, I'm much less washed out now. Good. I still need more light coming from here. Hold on. What I need is for those of you who have any experience with photography or with lighting for cinematography or whatever, what I need is a reflective umbrella to put on the wall over here to catch the light coming in from the window, and it would just spray it everywhere all over the room. And then I would have more light coming from behind me than I would from this one in front of me. Anyway, that doesn't matter. Welcome in, everybody. All right, let's see. Yeah, so I was just getting ready for stream, and I thought that I had a whole other hour left, and you know, I didn't. It was already after 3. And it was like, oh, wait, that's the time that I stream. Wait. Wait, I need to be live. Tenekoe, welcome in. Good to see you, Kaimatora. I hope you're having a fantastic day. Good. And I hope that you found us going over the article helpful. Your articles, both, because we covered them both. You were there. But I hope you found that helpful. I really enjoy reading your work. And it's always a pleasure. And today I really want to talk about the thing that I wrote, albeit 12 or 15 years ago that I wrote it. But the thing that I wrote on mediation and commodity, because I would like some feedback on some of my work too. because I love that. I really do get the appeal to that. And right when I first started writing stuff academically, I was very embarrassed, right? That's not really the right way to put it. That's not, but I was shy about my work. I didn't want other people to read it. I didn't mind my instructors reading it. I wrote it for them, right? But sometimes my wife would be at the time would offer, if you'd like, I can read your stuff for you. No, that's no, you know, just even that somebody that I trust and is very intelligent and would have given me very good feedback. When I first started writing, I was really very shy about it. But now that I've got some experience, and now that I know that some of my work is good, not all of it. I have written a lot of really garbage essays, and I've spent a lot of time and energy on stuff, and then like I'll get 30 hours into doing something and be like, this sucks. This is really terrible. I just need to scrap this whole thing. It's not working out. But that, you know, just comes with experience. You have to do it. You have to do some work that's garbage first before you can figure out what not garbage work is, and how to make that and how to do that. We are blessed to have a little fur baby with us. That's Lilith, sleeping in the background. Maybe her sister will join us later. Rowena also likes to sleep. Rowena spots right here in front of the pillow, and this is Lilith's spot here, tucked in the corner of the pillow. I would rather my pillow be on that wall, right? The whole room looks better, the bed looks better, right? Having the big pillow that's as wide as the bed at the head of the bed, covering up my pillow and the top of the sheets. But when I put the pillow at the end of the bed, the cats don't sleep on the bed. When I put the pillow here, the cats sleep on the bed. So that's why the pillow is where it is. Welcome in, Matt. Good to see you. Hope you're having a good one. Yeah, good. Good. Absolutely. Okay, Matara. Thank you. You know, it's good. I really love reading insightful, thoughtful philosophy, but a lot of it is really thick and dense and hard to get through. You provide bite-sized bits of really thoughtful ideas, right? That are, you can just sink your teeth right into it. A few bites later, it's gone, right? And you're done, and now you get to process and think about it. I really enjoy the size that you're going with. Even your longer ones on your old account, I think were still pretty reasonable. A few mouthfuls. I think that a few philosophy mouthfuls is enough at a time for a lot of people. Yeah, cats are they've got their own particularities. However that word is actually pronounced. Particularities. There you go, particularities. Yeah, that's a little bit better. Good. So, but that's not the first thing that I want to do today. Let's get this out of the way. Oh, and that's not the thing that I thought it was. So did we get the thing? Yeah, okay, we got the thing. But I've got to put another hand over here just to verify. Yep. Good. So, the first thing that I want to do, I looked and have looked several times to try and find that video for Pillow of Dreams. Welcome in, Jane. Good to see you. Thanks for popping in and saying hi. I hope you're having a great day. I was not able to find that video that I was looking for before, but I'll keep looking because I do want to show it off, and we'll keep talking about the video game later too as it develops. But I did find a better video for Skeet Fighter. So I wanted to do a better job. Oh, let's get rid of the starting soon. I wanted to do a better job of plugging this channel because I kind of brought it up and then I just didn't do a great job of because I wasn't prepared on Wednesday's stream. So I'm trying to make up for that. This to be a little bit more prepared. This is a good. Well, we probably won't watch all 15 minutes of it, but it will give a good idea of what the channel's about and what this individual is doing. So we're gonna play a good bit of this, and then I'll share. Actually, let me do that first. Share the link so you all can spread this around. But then we're just going to dive right into stuff because there's a lot of things that I want to talk about today that are all very tied to the video. So we're gonna do a few things in rapid succession right after we're done with this, and then we're going to get to the Andrewism video. Get a little bit of a breather there, and then from there we'll see. We'll see where we are.
I felt like re-victimized over again, like they're not going to do anything about it, which they didn't. They said it was a. I felt like re-victimized over again, like they're not going to do anything about it, which they didn't. They said it was a he said, she said kind of case, and they closed it. So many women are going missing or show up murdered, and then we just think that they're another statistic. But no, this is a person, this is an Indigenous person who has a family to go home to. That hurts. We are doing whatever we can on showing, like, hey, we're going to give you guys a voice, because we know that it's been silenced, but no, we want to make sure that you guys have a voice.
Reports have found that Indigenous women are victims of murder about 10 times as much as the national average. For Brute, I'm taking you to the Navajo Nation, where I met with Melissa Skeets. She's a 33-year-old Navajo woman who is rollerblading across the nation to raise awareness for missing and murdered Indigenous women. She's trying to hit 300 miles.
I'm just going to color my hand. You know, within the Indigenous communities, we've just been silenced for a long time. The hand over our mouth just signifies that no, we are going to be heard. And we are going to fight and do whatever we can with whatever strength we got, and have that our ancestors protect us, ancestors guide us, that we are going to do whatever it takes. No more stolen sisters. Today's the day we start our adventure. Like, this week is going to be challenging. I know it. I know I'm going to be in pain. I know my feet are going to hurt. I know I'm going to cry. I know I'm going to get mad. I know I'm going to be happy. Now it's time to get on the road and just do it.
I think that's a pretty good introduction to the channel, what it's about, what she's trying to do. I thought this was a better introduction, a better way to to promote it, right? The last video, I don't think I picked a good one to play. But either way, check the channel out and promote them if you can, because they're raising awareness and doing stuff, right? And I think that's pretty cool. Another thing, and this is going to, well, actually, I think we're going to do this in a minute. We'll do this after we go through the mediation and commodity. Prosper Does Things is a channel I didn't know about before. I just found them, but they're pretty right about what they have to say here and in some of the other places I've seen them. So this is going to set us up, because I want to do a lot of talking about authority today, especially with regard to how we are sometimes convinced that authority is freedom. And I'm alluding specifically to the way that our society thinks about police and policing, where we've been conditioned to believe that police are the reason why we have a just society. Police are the reason why we're safe. And right, we all know that nothing could be further from the truth. But those two things are all going to need to be worked out, and we'll do that. But let's get to my article. I haven't pulled this up yet, but it probably won't take long for me to. Damn it, that's not it. Also not it. I would say third time's a charm, but I just cheated this time. And that's all right. Let's see if that's a better view. Not really. Let's put it back here, and then I'll fix it. So, doing stuff is the most important part of learning, right? The praxis, that we're actually putting it into some kind of practice at some point, is exactly right. Kind of, I'm like trying to change my mind on what I've done. But that's all right. We'll just do this. It's okay. I just need to grow up and get over it. And sometimes things are not going to be the way that I want them to be, and I just need to grow up and get over it, huh? All right, so this is it's kind of a long article, and you all have read it, I would imagine. So, and if not, it's in the Discord. You should check it out. It's actually really pretty good, I think. You know, I wrote it, so I might be kind of floating my own boat a little bit here. What did you all think while I'm messing around with this? For anyone that had the time to read this essay that I put in Discord, what did you all think? So snap back up there, and then do that from that side. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. Okay, so I think that's yeah, the bottom text can be covered with, well, then it's hard to see what the text is. That's because white against white is not a really good combination there, huh? Okay, good. Good. So, we can skip the abstract. Though actually I'm not going to. A few things that I would like to say about this too. If anybody is interested in learning how to practice or learning about academic writing, this is a very generic academic work. So there's a formula to the way that everything is put together, and at some point I'll find the outline. I was looking for it. That's what I was doing when I ran out of time, is I was looking for the outline that I put together for this essay, And you can see in the outline that it's like an algebraic equation where you have the formula laid out, and that's the outline of your essay, and then you just go get the things. I need this this quote that says this thing. I need to get this quote that says this thing. I need to have the thing in between those quotes that explain them. I need to have this point spelled out, and I need to have these premises set up in place so that, right, and there's a formula, and you are just it, right, you have a generic formula, and you get the things that you need to plug in, and then at the end of that, you have an essay. And you just have to add a few sentences here and there so that it makes coherent sense to a reader. Done. And it's not a difficult process, but it's a process that does take some practice. And this would be a pretty good practice example. So the outline is intended to be sentence by sentence an explanation of all of the main things that the essay is hoping to accomplish. In modern societies, there are various forms of alienation that pervade the lives of individuals, and many of these mediational relationships are counterproductive or damaging to the societies in which they are permitted to exist. And this is also probably a little bit too pedantic a word. Maybe that's the right word, or pretentious. We don't need to use fancy language. And that's, anyway, when dealing with issues of society structure and the historical influences that shape them, it is often difficult to critically analyze institutions and the methods they employ. And that's alluding to, there's a whole section where I'm talking about systemic institutionalization, and how Butchkin is talking about how we don't examine the, right, but that's in the essay, and this is a sentence that is directing readers to that. This is exactly the challenge pressed by Murray Bookchin in the work Post-Scarcity Anarchism. The goal of this research is to assess these forms of alienation, determine the impact that they have on individuals and society as a whole, and establish the possibility that societies can and should function without detrimental forms of alienation. This analysis will examine his critique of the bourgeoisie commodity system, and I think there should be a dash in between there, the bourgeoisie commodity system and the forms of mediation that promote oppression, exploitation, and inefficiency in societies and economies. So real quick, too, now that I've finally gotten through the abstract, a large reason why I would like to cover this essay has to do with we were talking on stream previously, and commodification came up, and I began to make statements where I was equating all forms of mediation with being necessarily bad. And I was kind of getting caught up and I felt like there was something wrong with how I was getting caught up, but I couldn't figure it out. And this is the distinction. Mediation isn't necessarily bad in itself. And I was hung up on that idea that if we have mediation, in our levers to the power, the levers to economic control in society, the levers to political autonomy, right? If we have any kind of mediation, then what we have is a necessarily bad alienation and we should try to eradicate that. But the necessary consequence to that was kept tickling my brain and saying, but that can't be the case, is that we all can't all be bosses of all the things that happen all throughout society. And it doesn't make sense for us to want to insist on that kind of existence. That would be exhausting and terrible, right? For all of us to have to participate in all of the decisions of all of society, which would be necessary if we wanted to eliminate all mediation, right? That means that nobody is doing anything anywhere without your consent. And we don't need that. And that's, right, that's an unrealistically high bar. And with this realization comes a nuanced understanding of mediation. If mediation is something that we can't do without, how do we do it the most best way, the most just way, and the way which leads to the least amount of oppression or domination is the thing that Bookchin is most concerned with in regard to those structures and that mediation. Fancy language is classist. And it's something that I struggled with really an awful lot. When I first became a streamer, I was really very lucky to get to become friends with Anarchist Laboratory, Yona, who was patient, who worked with me, and was eventually convinced me that I needed to stop dropping, $20 words every other sentence, right? That rather than using, because it's a kind of, for somebody that feels like an imposter, somebody that has imposter syndrome, using the words, right? The big words was a way for me to legitimize myself in language and in conveying myself as an authority. I need to know the word, and I need to be able to use the words. And it was not my intention to be a gatekeeper. But when you use that kind of language and then make everybody else jump through your hoops so that they can understand the thing that you're trying to say, right? That's kind of what you're doing. It's not helpful, and luckily I had some comrades who helped me realize that when I first became a streamer. I read through only half of the essay before today and thought it was good piece from what I read. Specializing is an unavoidable thing at this point. Yeah. Those who are affected decide. Those who are affected decide is how we would do this. Right. Right, for sure. And that's a very, let's get that actually. That's a threshold that needs to be put on the, I don't even have it pulled up, on the outline. That, it's something that you've mentioned before, it's something that we've talked about a few times before, but it really is one of the most important thresholds for determining who, right? There's a few W's that we'll have to answer when it comes to authority, and who is a very big one of those W's. Who's involved in the decision-making process and who's affected. those two who's need to be identical, right? Who decides and who's impacted. Those who's need to be identical. Thank you for the follow. Good looking out. Welcome in. Now I forgot what I was looking for. Oh, right. The outline for socialist ontology. And I'm just going to, actually at the very top of this document, I'm not going to bother pulling it all the way up. I'm just going to put a note. Threshold for W equals society. Right. And that's not at all what you said, but that's a note that will help me remember. In fact, I'm just going to copy and paste the thing that you said with it. And there you go. I mean, why would I not do the easier thing? Why would I not just do the easier thing, self? There you go. Save that, move that out the way. Okay, good. Used to talk in huge words too. Then I had to communicate with illiterate people and simplified. Never went back. And that's the thing. Once you understand that language just works better if you don't have to constantly re-explain yourself all the time because you've used pedantic words for no good reason. Gonna be the hardest wank I've ever had? Okay. Not sure what that means, but I guess we'll see. Let's get back to this. Okay. So, and I've got this quote here at the top. Yeah, that's, I think I'm not cutting too much off. From Bookchin here. Bourgeoisie society has brought all relations between people to the highest point of abstraction by divesting them from their human content and dealing with them as objects. The object, the commodity, takes roles that formerly belong to the community. Exchange relationships supplant nearly all other modes of human relationships. In this respect, the bourgeoisie commodity system becomes the historical culmination of all societies. Yeah, so no, I don't have, there's not a hyphen there. I don't know. Anyways, so in this quote, Bookchin is identifying the reasons that human societies' social interaction lacks the elements of spontaneity and diversity that are necessary preconditions for a revolutionary climate. So the goal that this is pointing out an end telos, right? That the ultimate end goal has to do with setting the necessary preconditions for a revolutionary climate, because we don't go to war with capitalism. A revolutionary approach goes around. We don't need to go through. We don't need to bang our face against that wall. We know how that ends. But what we ought to be doing is trying to establish the preconditions for revolution going around. This obstruction is almost in direct opposition to the forms of freedom that Bookchin discusses in the work Post-Scarcity Anarchism. This assertion is simply that mediation has bred domination, hierarchies, and social inequalities from the times of early mankind and has infiltrated nearly every aspect of human society. So I'm also hinting again about the systemic institutionalization here, which I'll talk about more specifically a little bit later. And I'll point out where I'm talking about it, and I'll point out that I don't do a good enough job of cementing it all together so that the reader knows that the words that I put in the abstract and the words that I put here in the introduction and the things that I've said leading up to the point about systemic institutionalization all prove this point. I don't do as good a job as I'm supposed to in that, but sometimes the formula works for you, and sometimes you have to actually do some of the work of the formula too. It did it again. I watched it. OBS keeps resizing itself. Okay, I'm gonna leave it where it is. Okay, hopefully OBS stops messing with me. Okay, okay. You can't tell from here? Good. Okay. Yeah, and I think it would be fair if everyone in chat could respect everybody else's desires to not want to hear about what you're doing in private. I think that's a very good point, Jane. that chatters in general should respect other chatters and not announce things that nobody is really interested in. A 5 to 10 second delay, though. Yeah, let me check. I haven't checked my... I usually do this. Oh, my goodness. I'm dropping frames really fast. All right, internet, I really need you to just work because I really want to get through this stuff today. Yeah, it's I'm looking at it. It's right now I've got a 14% dropped frame rate and increasing. No, I'm not. I can switch over to hotspot, but we'll get a temporary F. And I think I'm going to have to because the connection really does keep getting worse. And yeah, worse and worse. So that's going to be what we have to do, it looks like. Oh. I thought that was one thing, but it was another, but that's okay because it doesn't matter. Okay, everybody, if you experience an F, please just bear with us. We will be right back. Just bear with us. We will be right back. Let me check OBS, which OBS thinks we are still streaming. And we have a great connection now with 0 drop rates, but we also have 0 viewers and 0 uptime. So something ain't adding up yet. But it looks like I'm back here. I'm still not back here. Let me refresh this page. Yep, it looks like we are back. Okay, good. Back, and we are still up on YouTube, and this has been interrupted, but has continued. We have had a successful stream reset, and my connection's fantastic now. Good deal. Good. Because, again, I just really want to get through this. Cool. Good. Make that go away, and good. Here we are. Good. Welcome back, everybody. I just got these water bottles, and I'm not sure, but they might be leaking. That's what I get for getting a brand name that I can't really identify. Anyway, yeah. I might be returning these water bottles. Great ad placement though, huh? Good. I'll just trust you on that, Matt. I mean, I guess there's no reason to wait around for them to put something inappropriate in chat, huh? Good. All right, cool. Good. Good. We back. Everybody back. Thank you. Good. Where was I with I think I got to no, okay. The assertion is simply that mediation has bred domination, hierarchies, and social inequalities from the times of early mankind and has infiltrated nearly every aspect of human society. Again, that's the systemic institutionalization I'm hinting at. Not only is this a formidable foe by itself, but culture and technology tend to work to support and enforce current forms of mediation while simultaneously creating new and more oppressive forms of mediation. The concern that we should have about Bookchin's claim is twofold. First, is Bookchin correct in believing the bourgeoisie commodity system is responsible for changing social relationships from face-to-face interactions to mediated and impersonal relationships? Second, is the form of mediation discussed here by Bookchin necessarily beneficial or toxic for human society? And this should have been phrased differently too. It should have been discussed here by Bookchin necessarily beneficial. Right, it should have been the form of mediation discussed here by Bookchin necessarily toxic. No, beneficial first. Beneficial, semicolon, is the second form of, well, I don't know how it should, but the second part should have been treated separately. First to determine if it was necessarily beneficial. If it's not necessarily beneficial, then determining if it's necessarily toxic, which is the point that we're trying to figure out. That, and the end of the essay conclude that it's not necessarily either. It can be both. It's not necessarily either. Yeah, that I still had to do that. Still loading? You're still loading, Matt? Switching to, okay. Speaking of, hold on, let me check. Okay, good. And now that I think about it, this needs to have its own thing, because right now on the about I have that this is about systemic institutionalization, which is kind of true, but also kind of not. Systemic institutionalization needs its own thing, and then this could be a part of the explanation of the thing, but it needs its own thing. Yeah, I'll do that later. Twitch is bugging. Okay. Yeah. Well, and it's, sometimes it's, let me check something real fast. Because I've had problems with Twitch before when I've ended and then started a new stream where Twitch, it'll say that I'm live, but if you click on the live, it'll take users to the VOD, right? It's almost like it loses the live. Twitch loses the live. You had to close and reopen the Twitch app entirely. For me, I just had to refresh the page and it came back. Make sure we're still, yeah, okay. Wow. So you're not getting me at all. I even switched to mod view. Are you getting a black screen? Twitch just sucks. Okay. Gotcha. Okay. All right. So, anyway, so these are the goals. Right, we want to, and this is really where we're going to get to today. We don't have to get through the whole article, and probably to where about Jane read is I'm guessing probably about where we'll get to today. We might not even have to get all the way halfway through, because this is really where we want to get into the idea of what mediation is, right? And we can kind of skip over some of this actually. No, I should get this part. Okay. Yeah. Bookchin claims that the intervention of mediation goes back in history almost as far back as society itself. Right. That Bookchin is not aware and is kind of erasing indigenous philosophies should not be a surprise to us. I didn't know that at this time, so I wouldn't have had the wherewithal to include that critique, but that's where this critique should go. The idea that commodities like food production and religious salvation were employed by leaders and chieftains to manipulate and dominate others to accomplish their ends. Modern archaeology and anthropology certainly confirm much of this, but the motive of these leaders and chieftains is suspiciously speculative. It is at least arguable that the commodities were used as incentives to produce ends that were beneficial to all in the long run. If there were a few or only one in control of the food supply, and this advantage is used to convince the masses that they should build a wall around the village for defense against wild animals and invaders, the outcome is one that will promote the well-being for every member of that village. Now, that this hypothetical has been constructed, let us consider what this could possibly imply. We now have good reason to question whether mediation of this sort is necessarily detrimental to society. Of this sort, where right, the advantage that one has is used to convince the masses. That's what we're talking about. Whether this sort of mediation is necessarily detrimental to society. It is also not clear how mediation and social structure can be easily distinguished, much less separated to be examined independently of each other, which there'll be a whole paragraph where I talk about nothing but that. Finally, and more to the point of our first concern above, this does not explicitly show how mediation has changed social interactions in a way that Bookchin fears inhibits the roles that belonged to the community. But I have not yet been truly fair to Bookchin's claims, and this example is merely one oversimplified hypothetical situation. I'm setting up a hypothetical situation that will be very useful later when we get to the detrimental and toxic, and how community can do the same thing as leadership. This example and this analogy works really well for illustrating both of those points. Finally, right, I read that already. But I have the first goal will be to address mediation in its various forms. Relationships become mediated at any time that something, some commodity, comes between people in that society. It is important to note that Bookchin recognizes that mediation can be in the form of material items like food and money, but can also refer to services, ideology, or even other people, right? Our relationships with and to other people can be mediated only through other people, right? And for all of these things, that's true. It's important to note that, right, I already read that. Regardless of what is mediating interactions between people, the outcome is a detached and less personal social situation. This can have a series of subtle but very serious implications. The goal of this essay will be to examine the implications that Bookchin attribute to mediation and determine if the forms of mediation are a product of the bourgeoisie commodity system. And for those of you who are taking note, this is poorly worded here, because I've already stated the goal of the essay, right? That's the point of the end of the introduction paragraph has the thesis statement with the two main things that I want to work out, right? So this should have been phrased in a different way. The goal of this part of the analysis, or some other, I did not mean to click that, will be to examine the implication that Bookchin attribute to mediation and determine if the forms of mediation are a product of the bourgeoisie commodity system. One of the implications is that mediation can cause people in a society to view others by means of acquiring commodities or perceiving them as investments. A second is by removing the humanity from interaction in society, the functions that are, by removing the humanity from interactions in society, no? Second is by removing the humanity from interaction in society, from the functions, I think maybe, from removing the humanity in interactions in society, that are the responsibility of the whole. By removing the humanity from interactions in society, from the functions that are the responsibility of the whole community, are greatly impeded. Why am I tripping out about this? What am I trying to say here? I didn't have any problems reading it earlier, the first time I tried to read through this. Okay. One of the implications is that. A second is by removing the humanity from interactions in society, the functions that are the responsibility of the whole. By removing the humanity from interaction in society, take a breath, the functions that are the responsibility of the whole community are greatly impeded. Okay, gotcha. Yes, there's supposed to be a comma between society. Yes. The second is by removing the humanity from the interactions in society, the functions that are the responsibility of the whole community are greatly impeded. And that's, I knew that I hadn't misworded anything here. I knew that I hadn't misworded anything here. And I'm like, why can my brain not understand the words? I wrote them. A third is the alienation of the people involved in mediated interactions. And it's funny, I think that Jane got it a lot faster than I did too. That's exactly right. There needs to be another comma there. Right, these should be semicolons then, and there needs to be another comma here. These three things are the inherent dangers that Bookchin wants to abolish in society as a whole. To understand how they are so detrimental must be explored in greater detail, which we do below. Right. In any society, anyone depends at least somewhat on others in that society, especially in current-day industrialized nations. People tend to have one profession, make one thing, serve one purpose. Each of these people depend on others for food, shelter, and the basic necessities of life. So one major critique that I would have here is nobody in society does only one thing, right? Even people who are doctors are also mothers, or they are also caretakers for their grandparents or their parents. They're also people. You're right that people serve more than one function in society at a time. But that's a nuance that is not really important for the overall thrust of what we're talking about here. It seems only natural that the workings of such a culture would depend heavily upon an economical transactional model, and it does. People in today's society barter, trade, and exchange currency. In other words, people view others in society as a means for acquiring the goods and services that one desires to lead a happy life. So it might be the case. And after having reread the entire essay a few times. Did I lose connection again? No, we're good. Okay. Things are just tripping. I'm not entirely sure if this relationship is unavoidable. And that one of the next questions for me personally is to the extent that it can be. That, and the thing that I'm really focused on here is that people will necessarily view others in society as a means, right? And I'm not sure if this is a necessary consequence of a market-based economy where people's basic needs are behind paywalls, or if this is something which is necessarily inherent of any kind of market economy, right? In any kind of structure. Which I suspect that it is. But to call this behavior natural, however, may be inaccurate. And this, I'm not going to go on about that right now. To seek food when one is hungry is an evolutionary trait for survival. To breathe is involuntary because it's biologically necessary for one to live. To seek food when one is hungry is an evolutionary trait for survival. These are examples of truly natural behaviors. It is not so easy to make a case for engaging in commerce as a natural inherent behavior. Yes, we would still have to trade and exchange and depend on others for some of our basic needs. And that's the thing. Yes, Jane, absolutely. And the thing is, to what degree does that dependence on others for things lead to viewing others in society as a means? And there's some distinction to be made here too, right? And I don't have mere means written here. That would be the real big distinction. Immanuel Kant says we can use other people for ends, right? If you are at the grocery store and there's a bagger bagging your groceries, you are using their services as a means to get your groceries from the conveyor belt to your car, right? Or to however you're going to leave. If you treat that bagger as a mere means, that's deplorable. That's evil. That's wrong, because that bagger who's bagging your groceries is their own person with their own projects, with their own desires, with their own values, and you should value them as a person, even if you are using them for some ends, right? It's okay to use people as means. It's not okay to use or treat people as mere means, right? As you are just a cog, you are just a stepping stone, you are just the means to my end, without regard to your humanity, your dignity, your anything, right? And that's there's a little bit of distinction to be made there, but from the perspective of a systemic philosopher who teaches ethics, that nuance is really pretty weak in how we understand each other and our relationships. But again, some of where I'm coming from is being informed by my experience as a moral agent existing in an economic situation in which all of our basic needs are all behind paywalls. And that is absolutely going to bias my perspective and my understanding of relationships and my understanding of this particular kind of relationship. Yeah, I think that we're gonna that's I keep getting messages that I've been reconnected to chat, and every time that happens, I think that I've effed. So I just need to get over for the rest of stream today. That's probably going to be a continual thing, and I just need to accept it and move on. All right, back to where we are. Right, it's not so easy to make the case. If we operate under the assumption that economic enterprise is not a natural characteristic of mankind, then we can safely place it in a category of things that humans could live without. Having made the point that we could exist without transactional mediation, we must now determine if we should exist without it. When dealing with the topic of economy and economic enterprise, a continual reoccurring theme in Bookchin's writing is the advantage of diversity. It would seem at first glance that what Bookchin intends that we must remove all elements is that we must remove all elements of market from human interaction. But to do away entirely with commerce and exchange would mean that one person would have to know how to perform every job having to do with every good or every service that one person would ever need in their entirety of their life. Diversity on this level is, of course, very extreme, and to claim that this was what Bookchin had intended, I feel, be doing the man a great disservice. And here I should be referring to their works, the words, right, the ideas, and not any concern to Bookchin themselves, because they're dead and don't care. But nitpicking. The diversity to which Bookchin speaks is in reference to the destructive methods used in mass production. Farmers use up ever more land and so much faster to meet the demands of too many buyers in too many far-off locations. Factory owners build mega factories and cram more and more workers into them. Consolidation of production in this way accelerates pollution, destroys natural resources, and creates systems of incredible inefficiency. Modern society, Bookchin states, especially as we know it in the United States and Europe, is being organized around immense urban belts, a highly industrialized agriculture, and capping both, a swollen, bureaucratized, anonymous state apparatus. It should be conceded that there is some benefit to specialization, as mentioned above, and it is arguable that it is simply not feasible to diversify all production and industry. These points, however, are not entirely in conflict with the overall thesis that Bookchin is attempting to convey. It does seem that commercial and economical forms of mediation are unavoidable in a society, and that this may cause those in the society to view others as a means or investment. I have failed to find any means by which these two, society and economic mediation, can be separated in a manner that would be in any way beneficial. That said, there are clearly ways in which, typo there, businesses, agriculture, and production could be done more efficiently and without such destructive side effects. What has been established so far in the essay, though, is not yet the whole picture that Bookchin is trying to point out of mediation and commodity. Perhaps the distinction that should be drawn between mediation in general and what Bookchin attributes to bourgeoisie commodity system. I had a thought when reading this, and it was every human action would be natural by virtue of us being natural. And I think that we should use the term organic instead. I think the pushback that I would make for that is, well, and I'm not sure how important this distinction is, so I'm trying to think through. So the use of natural here is used in a very specific way as antithetical to the idea of artificial. So, when humans use their will to materially change things in the world, that is an artifact, right? Whether they cut down a tree and hew it into a chair, or whether they bend the wills of other humans into a state. Right? This is an artifact where things were as they were, and human interference and the use of the human will combined with what is naturally in the world has created something new, and that something new is an artifact, or it is artificial. And these, right, so there's that which is and exists, and that is in nature, and that is nature. And I think that this is why I'm trying to figure out whether that distinction is important, because we understand that distinction to be erroneous humans are never separate from nature. And I think that's the direction that you're going with this. We are natural, we are nature, and what we do is by definition natural for us to do. There is, and this is a good. I love this. There are no human actions. There are no human actions which are not natural. Right, in this way, from Jeffrey Dahmer to the practice of pederasty in ancient Athens, to the fact that our society is run by pedophiles today. Right, it's those things are natural because humans do them. Whether or not they're good, whether or not they're beneficial, whether or not that, right, there's a lot of other things that we can, attributes that we can cram in there to try and add more specificity, but all human behaviors are natural behaviors in this way. So now I'm thinking, what does organic do that's different? That would be the question. What does organic do that's different than natural? Is that actually the point of distinction here? Okay, there isn't clarification provided in the sentence you've given. Okay. I've read it several times to make sure that there's not some additional clarification there that I'm missing. No, that's the thing that I would need, I think, is to understand what's different about organic. What does organic do that is different and distinct from how we think about the difference of natural versus artificial? Okay. Distinguish between organic and inorganic. Huh. Well, no, hold on. But what though then is the world? What is the world of the inorganic? What is the world of the inorganic, and why would we care about it? Because if this is the way that we are separating out, then we are in nature and everything is natural, and then everything that we incorporate into how we structure, those are all going to be organic, right? So even our markets, our banking systems, those, even though they're made up of immaterial, inorganic, like the buildings and the coins, right? But still, it's the organic part. It's the human will directing. What is then? Well, let me look at this at because this is what we're talking about. Did I go too far? Okay. Well, that doesn't seem to be helping me at all. Wait, we're trying to figure out. Commerce and exchange are not only beneficial, but may also be necessary, if not necessarily natural. If not certainly natural. Right, because here I'm just saying, well, it's not certain that it is or isn't natural. I think I'm going to have to mull on that for a little bit, Jane. I think I'll have to mull on that a little bit longer. I'll think some about it. Because I feel like something keeps tickling my brain about which direction I should go with it, but I can't get more than a tickle. So we'll move on, and I'll come back and address that again later, Jane. Yeah, of course. And if you've got any clarifying thoughts later, that you can just send them to me in DM or post them in Discord. That's fine. Either way. Discord is actually better, because if you DM me, I'm probably gonna forget. I'm terrible about keeping up with that. A primary concern for him is the power of those in government and administrative positions. Those in control of commodities have... those in control of commodities. Is this where I was? Yeah. Yes. Primary concern for him is the power of that those in government and administrative position, those in control of commodities, have and continually employ over those whom depend upon said commodities. So again, this is kind of hinting at Marx's idea, and this is pre-Marx. So this is Marx's idea of that people's material goods are mediated, right? That they can't have direct access to their things. That's not what I want to say about that. What did I want to say about that? Oh, that's what I wanted to say about that. This is, as a quick aside, a good material example that we might look to is that they are about to reinstitute the mandatory draft at the same time that we are in the process of stringent austerity measures. We are dismantling all of the social safety nets that everyone in society depends on to live and survive. That's not an accidental thing. Right? Those two things are the same thing. right? That's this is the thing, right? When people in control who are in control of the commodities that we all need to live, when they have exclusive access to all of the things. Right, that's what I wanted to hinge on here. Right, good. Refer back to the earlier example of the villagers that were motivated to build a wall for the protection of all those in the village. In this example, the ends were justified and beneficial. But what of instances where this is not the case? And if you'll recall, in the example above, a person who was in control of the food supply used their control of the food supply to get everybody else to build a wall so that they could protect their stuff, right? The person in control of the food supply wanted to maintain protection of their food supply, and so wanted the other people who didn't have access to that commodity to build a wall. The outcome was a wall that protects everyone from invaders and from the wilderness, and ends up being a benefit for everyone in society, though it was built out of coercion. The way that it came about was a coercive organization in the first place, but the ends ended up being relatively good for all of those concerned in the example above. And that's how I've constructed it and how I've imagined it and what I was thinking when I wrote the thing. Anyway, so the ends were justified and beneficial. But what of instances where this is not the case? What if the ends are a selfish and self-serving goal solely for the benefit of one or the ones in control of the food supply? In the event that the product would be for the benefit of all may have justified the means. The method could be seen as coercion, but the end result was one that made everyone better off in the long run. However, it is just as likely that the community as a whole would have arrived at the same conclusion, that a wall would be a good thing to have, and orchestrated themselves without any leader, any coercion, or any incentive other than it would have been a good thing to have, right? We don't have to have the leader for people to come together and decide that they would like something to benefit them. Now, this brings us to the second serious implication that was mentioned above. By removing the humanity from interactions in society, the functions that are the responsibility of the whole community are greatly, if not entirely, impeded. So I think that we are about where we want to, I'm going to finish this paragraph, and I think that's going to wrap it up for now. Let us then consider leaders and chieftains as being in the same category as economic enterprise, as something that humans could live without. This being the case, then we should also ask the question as to whether we should strive to exist without them. If these sorts of advantages or innovations can be conceived of, then they should be more easily conceivable by a group of collaborators. This is where the historical culmination pointed out by Bookchin really becomes important. Society has been indoctrinated with the idea that the masses need to be dependent upon leaders, governing bodies, and managerial institutions to make all important decisions about the benefit of the community. This deception is then consolidated and depended by technological advances which provided only enough material surplus for the few to live at the expense of the many. This is the pitfall that Bookchin is trying to make clear. It's all too easy and all too tempting for one or a select few to use this exploitative power. You shouldn't use pronouns in academic writing because it's sometimes not clear. Hey, welcome in, DJ Che. Good to see you. Thank you for the raid. Welcome in. I hope you're doing well. I hope you had a fantastic stream. Good to see you. That's right. So this is the pitfall Bookchin is trying to make clear. It is all too easy and all too tempting for one or a select few to use exploitative power over the resources and commodities that other people need to live. Exploitative power without regard or concern for the overall good and well-being of the community. Whereas in a situation in which the community is making the decisions for itself, the community would naturally be concerned for its own well-being, right? We work this paradox out real easy. From this, it follows that community should be free to govern itself, and not only leaders, unnecessary, but also potentially detrimental. But that not only are leaders unnecessary, but also potentially detrimental. There we go. As they can have purely selfish motivations. Excellent. And then I go on to imagine a leaderless world, and then we're going to start talking about a bunch of other authors. We're going to talk about Ward. I was trying to remember his first name, but I can't. And then Ward is talking about Bakunin, and so that's a whole other tangent that we can deal with another time. But I think that this is really where I wanted to get to. And for those of you who have been keeping track with all of my ramblings thus far, this is the part where I'm talking about systemic institutionalization. And here at the end of this paragraph, I should have reminded the author, the reader, I should have reminded the reader about all of the spots before where I was talking about or hinting about systemic institutionalization, and drawing all of that stuff together, because these, right, so society has been indoctrinated with the idea that the masses need to be dependent upon leaders. This deception is then consolidated and deepened by technological advances which provide, that doesn't matter, right? This has to do with means ends unity. So the way that this works is that the people who are in control, the few who have the commodities, and we are deprived of the commodities, they make it necessary to utilize certain ideas, right? For you to be able to work and to get a job and to be able to survive, you have to buy into certain things. Ideologically, you have to commit to and buy into and contribute to various things for your survival. When you do that, you are doing the Hannah Arendt work. You are doing the work of building tomorrow. Right? You are creating the conditions which will necessarily make tomorrow exactly like today. And it's the system is baked in this way. And this kind of goes back to the thing that I was talking about the other day, where it doesn't matter whether you dissent in this system, because your dissent is meaningless. Either you buy into the system and you disagree with the system, but you go along with it anyway, and it does what it wants without your concern or your consent, or without caring about how you feel about it. Or you give up on the system and you walk away from that system, which means that you're now homeless, poverty-stricken, you can't afford to eat, and will soon die anyway. Right? The system works out the kinks, right, by If you don't approve, fine. There's your there's your alternative, death and starvation. And that's this is how these things become necessarily systemically institutionalized. And the capitalists understood the means ends unity thing, long before communists did. Thank you for giving a shout out, Matt. I should have done that. I'm terrible. But thank you. I appreciate that. All right, I'm back. Right. And this is going to bring us to where we can segue. Right. I must have copied parts of this and pasted it, and it's having a trouble recognizing some of it as text. But that's going to be where we want that to be, I think. Commodity is an inorganic good in service production from mediation. Inorganic is a coerced form of social organization in this case. But the difficulty with that, though, is that interferes with our ability to recognize other people as commodities, and that people, not just their labor, but people themselves are commodified. Both in that the ruling class make them give up their labor, right, to that, in that they are commodified, but that other people in society use them, right? And this is I mean, I guess we could have a distinction between organic and inorganic commodity. But we'll keep thinking about that. Keep thinking about that. And this is a good spot to segue. Society has been indoctrinated with the idea that the masses need to be dependent upon leaders, government bodies, and managerial institutions to make all important decisions for the benefit of the community. And this is going to bring us back to here. Why am I not looking at the thing that I'm supposed to be looking at? Because this is not what I'm supposed to be looking at. That's definitely not what I'm supposed to be looking at. I'm going to be really upset. Fuck. Okay. Let's see, maybe I put it over here in this other thing. I don't think so. I'm pretty sure that's it. Or was supposed to be it. Fuck. Okay, I'll scroll through. There we go. I don't have to scroll far for it. Here we go.
I saw a video of someone getting beat up, and there were multiple.
Stop. Don't be mad. Don't be mad. It's not a big deal. It's okay. Don't be mad. You just got to reload the whole page. Wait for it. Not sure what's taking so long. And now I have to find the thing again because it's refreshed the whole page and reorganized all of the... TikTok. You fucking suck. TikTok, you fucking suck. To use as a platform, you fucking suck. Please, please stop making browser access to TikTok so fucking torturous. Please, please stop making TikTok so unusable on a desktop, for fuck's sake. Still just waiting for the page to load. Okay. Looks like it's going to actually play. Pause. And now I've got no audio. Oh, that's why. Okay, back it up, because I had to mute the tab before. Okay.
I saw a video of someone getting beat up, and there were multiple comments being like, I don't care what she did. You can't do that to someone. You could have just called the police. And it was such a beautiful representation of everything that is wrong with our society. Because like, oh, I can't beat someone up. I have to call the beating people up factory and have them send a representative. I'm not allowed to punch you in the face. I have to call someone who might end the life of you and your dog and a random bystander. I'm not allowed to put my hands on you. I have to call someone who might put both of us in a concrete box where we are stripped down.
Thank you. Thank you. What I was saying is, I don't get what's going on. My connection is good to the internet. My connection is good for the stream. My computer isn't burdened by anything. I'm not using a whole bunch of resources. I don't understand why I can't play the thing. Why won't it just let me play the video? Why won't it just let me play the fucking video? And you know, like, I don't need things to go perfectly. Right. Let me just take a minute. I don't need things to go perfectly. You know? I don't need everything to work out. I don't need everything to always be easy. I get that sometimes I don't understand why sometimes it needs to be so hard. Right, at least be thank you. At least be consistent. Oh. Okay, I'm gonna back this video up a little bit. So that we can maybe get through it.
I can't beat someone up. I have to call the beating people up factory and have them send a representative. I'm not allowed to punch you in the face. I have to call someone who might end the life of you and your dog and a random bystander. I'm not allowed to put my hands on you. I have to call someone who might put both of us in a concrete box where we are stripped down, fed slop, at risk of assault, having medical care withheld from us, doing forced labor, only to become unemployable when we leave. We are like fully removed from the reality of the systems we are dependent on. We fundamentally believe we are not capable of solving our own problems, and therefore we totally lack the imagination or the confidence to navigate conflict, struggle. We worship authority figures and punishment so much that we demand violent interference from the state so that we can avoid all potential discomfort or like genuinely engaging with our communities.
right? And there's the point. That is exactly the point. We have been indoctrinated with the idea that the masses need to be dependent on some governing body to step in and make all important decisions on behalf of all of us for the benefit of the community. We, the community, have been conditioned to turn over control of the community to somebody who is alienated from us, who is incentivized to not care about us. Right? That's exactly the point. Yeah, copy paste, and then just, why is it not copy? Why is it not? Yeah. And that's when what you do is very mechanical. And this is something I was going to rant about earlier and I got distracted, is the interesting thing with computers is the age-old idea that it's insanity to try the same thing over and over again, right? But if you've ever worked with computers, sometimes just trying the same thing 3 or 4 times over again does actually work. That's actually literally a thing that I have experienced time and time and time again. This thing that I have already tried 4 or 5 different times, you know what? I'm just going to try it one more time and see what happens. I don't know why it's working now. Zero understanding of why all of a sudden it worked when 5 or 6 times in a row, literally the exact same thing that I do mechanically all of the time, didn't work, but now does. Yeah, have you turned it on and off and on again? Yeah. And that's sometimes I've restarted modems. This is a really good example for anyone who's worked in networking with modems, right? When you set up a network and you begin to hook everything up, if everything works the first time, you have a problem. You have a problem. You just haven't figured out what it is yet. Because debugging the network is an essential, necessary step of setting up the network. Because the modems are going to fail, and the receivers are going to fail, and the broadcasters, the re-receivers are going to, and you just need to go through and reset everything a few times. And a lot of this has, those who have worked in the industry know that there's sometimes when you boot up the thing for the first time and it's supposed to do the thing where it connects to the external thing, and then it downloads the updates and thing that the thing needs for it to work correctly, because in the box it doesn't have what it needs because they figured out that they did it wrong in the fucking first place, and so they had to release a patch. As soon as it gets online, it gets patched, and then it downloads the patch and then installs the patch while you're trying to do the network, and it hasn't finished installing all of the stuff yet, which is why you have so many problems when you're trying to set up the network. So you have to set it all up and then just keep resetting everything. That's basically setting up network troubleshooting. Set it all up and just keep resetting it over and over 8 or 9 times. And then if after 8 or 9 times it works, maybe you won't get called back tomorrow to fix the same problem. Good. but they make a good point, and I think that they do a good job of making a good point. And when I come across somebody that makes a good point, they seem like a pretty interesting content creator. It's as an aside, there's a whole other conversation that I would like to have about the hypersexualization of our culture and society, and the fact that somebody, to be a content creator, would feel the need to be a content creator in their underwear all of the time. And that's not all that this content creator does. It seems like Prosper does a whole lot of different kinds of things, whole lots of different kind of content, and I'm not trying to sum them up or reduce them, and I'm certainly not trying to judge, in case anybody is getting the wrong impression. That they seem like a competent content creator. They're certainly very intelligent. They've made an excellent point here. What I'm speaking to is that we live in a culture and society where you have to do stuff in your underwear if you want to get attention, or right, you have to do that kind of thing. Yes, we are still watching the Andrewism video, and that's because that's what we have covered so far with regard to commodity and authority, and the relationships of these things and systemic institutionalization bring us to the Andrewism video, I think. Yeah, it works for me too. Good. So, and it's good timing because I really could use a bathroom break. And I've watched the first half of this video, I think 3 times now. I keep starting it and I get into it, but then, school stuff comes up, or I've got to go make dinner, or, it's always something. So it's the one that you posted. Yes. It's time to rethink religion. If it's not clear how it all ties together, I'll sum it all up at the end.
Before anyone gets nervous, let me be clear, I am not trying to start a cult, I'm not trying to sell snake oil, and God did not tell me to have multiple wives. But when I look outside my window, part of me wants to weep at the beauty of the natural world. I have the grand fortune of greeting forested mountains every morning. On most days, the skies yawn before me with brilliant brushstrokes of white amongst the blue. I'm blessed to see all sorts of birds visiting my neighborhood, from the quarrelsome grackle to the conversational kiskadee. When I behold the brilliance of nature, I can understand the impulse for religion. As the naturalist John Muir wrote, "In our best times, everything turns into religion. All the world seems a church and the mountains altars." Religion plays a crucial role in societies across planet Earth, for better and for worse, shaping how people perceive each other, organize politics, and interact with the natural world. Although secularism has gained significant ground over the past century, the persistence of religion, in various forms, cannot be understated, particularly where religion intersects with capitalism, statism, racial hierarchy, and perhaps most infamously, patriarchy. But what exactly is religion anyway? How has it affected the way we relate to nature and each other? And for people fighting for the present and future, what role might religion play in our lives? Anarchists have long proclaimed, no gods, no masters. But is there still room for religion in anarchy? Should we start our own solarpunk religion? Questions, questions, questions. And with my limited answers, I have no doubt that we can have a reasonable conversation about one of the least controversial topics in human history. Let's start by defining religion. There is no uncontested definition of religion. Encyclopedia Britannica calls it human beings' relation to that which they regard as holy, sacred, absolute, spiritual, divine, or worthy of a special reverence. Wikipedia defines religion as a range of social cultural systems including designated behaviors and practices, ethics, morals, beliefs, worldviews, texts, sanctified places, prophecies, or organizations that generally relate humanity to supernatural, transcendental, and spiritual elements. Religion may involve gods and spirits and guide interactions with human communities and the natural world. Special texts may be upheld as holy, and special people may be upheld as authorities. Some religions emphasize right behavior, others emphasize right belief. Considering the range of things involved, perhaps you can see why religion is so hard to delineate. It overlaps with much of what makes us human, how we see the world, what we value, and what we do in our day-to-day lives. That trifecta aligns with author Mark Green's definition of religion in Ethiopaganism, which we'll return to later. Religion is a combination of cosmology, ideology, and practice. The cycle of samsara, the dualistic war between good and evil, and the belief in any form of afterlife fall under cosmology, what is believed about the nature of the universe. The values of a religion fall under ideology. These are principles that guide your behavior, from the Golden Rule to the Law of Moses, as well as what may be considered sacred or profane.
Right, it's not super important, but maybe I harshly judged the water bottle. Oh, wait. Maybe I have, maybe I haven't. Nope, it's leaking. So, that's your I am going to send these back. I need to have a water bottle that's not going to leak. Right, because I put the lid on pretty tight. Could I get the lid on tighter? Yes, I could. I could use all of my strength to cinch it all the way down so that it's nearly impossible to get off later. No thanks. This is a leaky water bottle. That's the company. It's leaking more on me right now. We'll be sending those back. Anyway, back to the and the thing that I want to start to plant seeds about. Andrewism is talking about all of the things that go into the religion, the authorities, right, that we look up to. In fact, I'll back it up a little bit. We're at 326. Right, there, where was the thing? That we exalt the texts and we exalt certain authorities. Where was that? No, it was before cosmology. It must be somewhere in between
things
here.
Involved. Perhaps you can see why religion is so hard to authorities.
Yeah, right here.
Some religions emphasize as holy.
Right, so this is
human communities and the natural world. Special texts may be upheld as holy, and special people may be upheld as authorities.
Right, so this is, you all can't even see the video. Right, this is the spot that I was looking for, right? That the way that we consider texts in certain individuals as authorities is the thing that I'm planting the seeds of, because we're going to tie a bunch of stuff together.
Some religions emphasize right behavior, others emphasize right belief. Considering the range of things involved, perhaps you can see why religion is so hard to delineate. It overlaps with much of what makes us human, how we see the world, what we value, and what we do in our day-to-day lives. That trifecta aligns with author Mark Green's definition of religion in Ethiopaganism, which we'll return to later. Religion is a combination of cosmology, ideology, and practice. The cycle of samsara, the dualistic war between good and evil, and the belief in any form of afterlife fall under cosmology, what is believed about the nature of the universe. The values of a religion fall under ideology. These are principles that guide your behavior, from the Golden Rule to the Law of Moses, as well as what may be considered sacred or profane. Rituals, prayers, rites, festivals, and so on fall under the practice of religion. As Green describes, one of the reasons religion persists is thanks to the way humans process and interpret information. Our brains are wired to recognize patterns and log memories. These memories may be of direct sensory experiences or the imagined experiences of dreams, hallucinations, and stories. We use these memories to navigate the world, but our memories are not as reliable as they may seem. Our ability to discern real memories from false memories is pretty weak. Our brains will often emphasize information that reinforces what we already believe and discard the rest, a phenomenon known as confirmation bias. When you add the cultural conditioning of religion, which may normalize the belief in the supernatural through stories, people will see support for their beliefs no matter what.
So we are also already getting the kernels of systemic institutionalization. How the things that, and one of the ways that I think it's helpful is that confirmation bias is, it's the thing that informs it is not necessarily bad. What informs our confirmation bias is that we understand we're mortal creatures and we have to figure out how to survive the world. And we do this, and while we are doing this, you are constantly being bombarded with an ever-increasing amount of information and with an ever-increasing amount of sensory input in the world around you. As a being moving through the world, you only become more attenuated. You are more observant, but your confirmation bias works against you. So it's because I skipped that part. It's what helps us to survive in a world in which we are constantly being bombarded. Is we use our confirmation bias when something works well. It's something that we learn as a pattern, as a mode by which we survive in the world. And which is why for a lot of these ideas that we'll be talking about, those ideas aren't just flaccid beliefs that people have, right? They're not ideas that people kind of suppose might have some truth to them. They're that by which one has navigated the world, and they have taken that and made it part of their identity. And they do so in a world that has been constructed by people who want to control the world and them, right? So, as I was saying, the masters give us only the tools that the only tools that we can use to survive. And then we use those tools to survive, but when we do that, we build tomorrow. Confirmation bias is natural. Applying the scientific method is an easy way to combat it. Yes. It's important to try to disprove your beliefs with as more scrutiny than it takes to believe something. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And that's scientific method is a good recommendation for how one ought to go about tempering confirmation bias. The difficulty is that most people will not recognize situations in which they ought to implement the scientific method and be critical of the things. Right. But that doesn't naysay your point. That's just a different point in a different direction.
Religion manifests in vastly varied and surprisingly similar ways across continents and cultures. I'm speaking from the perspective of someone with an intimate, lifelong knowledge of Christianity, though I've deconstructed as well as some familiarity with Islam and Hinduism. That's just living in Trinidad. But long before Christianity, Islam, or Hinduism ever emerged, there was and remains the diverse set of beliefs, values, and practices held by ancient and contemporary peoples that are now grouped under the anthropological construct of animism. Modern Homo sapiens have been around for roughly 300,000 years. For most of that history, we've had a fairly intimate relationship with the rest of the biosphere. When discussing animism in Less is More, anthropologist Jason Hickel pointed out that the same way many of us today can recognize and remember facts about the brands, celebrities, and politicians of our media landscape, early human societies would have been able to name and describe hundreds, if not thousands, of plants, insects, animals, rivers, mountains, and soils.
And going back to the confirmation point that I was making earlier, this is the confirmation bias working, for better or worse, right? At some point, we were competent in all of the insects and all of the plants, and because those things were necessary, knowing about those things was necessary for our survival. That's the element of the confirmation bias that I was having a hard time getting across. It's not just in a natural thing that we have. I mean, it is a natural thing that we have, but it's not just a natural thing that we have. It is a natural thing that we develop. All of the things that you use, all of the faculties of apprehension by which you apprehend the world, all of those things are skills that you can be better or worse at, right? You can get better at telling time and telling the difference in time, but that takes you giving a lot of care and consideration and spending lots of time and effort and energy on working toward that kind of goal, right? That would be a weird goal if you really cared, but I mean, depends on what you do, but I guess. So confirmation bias isn't just natural. It's tied directly to that which is essential for our survival. That we have to go out of our way in our culture and society to know how to navigate banking and how to set up an account and how to, right? Those are things that are, necessary for us. And so the way that we care about the world is tied to this in a confirmation bias way because it's tied directly to our survival.
These humans would have understood that their existence depends on the well-being of the biosphere. There's only so much we can know about their beliefs, since they don't exactly fossilize. But they may have seen common traits and even kinship with the rest of the living and non-living community, and thus developed moral codes that would guide their interactions with these systems accordingly. This is the way of seeing the world that anthropologists call animism. In Beyond Nature and Culture, anthropologist Felipe de Escola recognizes that contrary to our contemporary separation of humans from the rest of nature, in many regions of the planet, humans and non-humans are not conceived as developing in incommunicable worlds or according to quite separate principles. The environment is not regarded objectively as an autonomous sphere. Plants and animals, rivers and rocks, meteors and the seasons do not exist altogether in an ontological niche defined by the absence of human beings. Animism emerges from and reinforces the mutualistic and commensalistic relationships that humans develop with our fellow organisms. As described by anthropologist Samuel Miller MacDonald in Progress, ecology identifies three notable kinds of relationships between organisms: mutualism, commensalism, and parasitism. In mutualistic relationships, organisms benefit each other. We provide hives and protection, while bees pollinate crops and produce honey. In commensalistic relationships, one organism captures energy from another, while doing neither harm nor good to the other. Lots of animals and plants make their home among trees, while neither harming nor helping the tree itself. Finally, in parasitic relationships, one organism captures energy from another to the other's detriment. Like the mosquitoes that may suck your blood with deadly consequences. so mutualism co-benefits, commensalism coexists, and parasitism deprives. Beyond organism-to-organism relations, MacDonald applies this framework to an organism's relationship with its environment. Human individuals and societies may form mutualistic, commensalistic, or parasitic relationships with the ecological systems they inhabit. And animist societies generally engage in commensalistic and mutualistic relationships with their environments.
I don't really want to spend a lot of time on this. I don't know what you were asking me, what I support. And I don't want to talk about what you want to talk about. Either talk about what we're talking about, say something with regard to the video or some of the content that you see going on in chat, or
For animists, all creatures and things are ensouled, having personhood, from animals to plants to rivers to mountains. In MacDonald's words, an animistic world is vibrant and full of life. The forest, a bustling city of creatures with unique and mysterious minds, a universe populated by millions of interiorities. As the scholar recounts, for example, among the horticultural Achua people of the Amazon, plants and animals are seen as relatives. Plants are children that must be mothered to maturity, while animals are the brothers-in-law the men hunt with respect and circumspection. I can already hear the objection that some of the indigenous or prehistoric societies that are usually considered animist have also done harm to their environments and even caused extinctions. This is true. When expanded into new territories,
thank you, Jane.
Many groups did damage the wildlife populations they encountered. Perhaps most infamously, human arrival in North America and Australia coincided with the extinction.
Thank you. Should I back it up a little bit? I'm going to back it up a little bit. Let's do. I think that'll do.
Historic societies that are usually considered animist have also done harm to their environments and even caused extinctions. This is true. When expanded into new territories, many groups did damage the wildlife populations they encountered. Perhaps most infamously, human arrival in North America and Australia coincided with the extinction of several megafauna. MacDonald also recounts the Austronesian peoples that decimated native species on many of the Pacific islands they set foot on. But though it came at a profound cost, they eventually learned to stop exploiting those places and develop beliefs and practices that integrated their societies within the limits of the island's ecosystems. They would still fish, hunt, gather, and farm, but sustainably, in the spirit of reciprocity and respect. Which is just a sensible thing to do. Our health and well-being, along with that of countless species, depends on how our human systems materially relate to natural systems. Animist beliefs thus provide a useful society-wide guide for beneficial behavior. And yet, animism is not the widespread belief of our times. So how do we end up here? Animism was displaced in much of the world, and now our societies are not primarily mutualistic or commensalistic in relation to the rest of nature. Our material relation with the biosphere is primarily parasitic. This is thanks in part to the catastrophic rise of states and development of dualism. Just to be clear, what follows isn't an exhaustive history of every religion and state, but an incomplete overview of where some of the dominant worldviews we inherited came from. In Worship and Power, anarchist Peter Gellerloos highlights how early states relied on religious and ritual authority to consolidate control. Early hierarchical religions were born among certain sedentary agricultural communities to legitimize authority, patriarchy, and state formation, while stateless peoples, whether mobile or sedentary, retained their decentralized animisms, heterodoxies, localized deities, and non-hierarchical pantheons. State religions went in the opposite direction. From Mesopotamia to the Andes, religion became centralized at monuments, pyramids, and temples, which attracted followers and coalesced a professionalized priestly class, and in some cases, priest-kings. Divine symbols and rituals were created around these sites to solidify their authority. Writing and number systems were used to support state administration, commercial record-keeping, and symbolic architecture. They elevated certain deities as supreme above others, while elevating certain human rulers as supreme above lesser rulers. Maternal, genderless, and hermaphroditic earth mothers and great spirits were replaced with father gods in the spiritual order, just as men were elevated above women in the social order. Spiritual, political, and commercial power went hand in hand. Statist societies fomented the erosion of animist beliefs and in many places favored dualistic beliefs. Dualism can mean many different things, but I want to focus on the mind-body dualism and human-nature dualism that has come to dominate our vision of reality. Historian Carolyn Merchant argued in The Death of Nature that for a long time, animist ideas had curtailed people's behavior towards the earth. The image of the earth as a living organism and nurturing mother had served as a cultural constraint restricting the actions of human beings. One does not readily slay a mother, dig into her entrails for gold, or mutilate her body. As long as the earth was considered to be alive and sensitive, it could be considered a breach of human ethical behavior to carry out destructive acts against it. As Hickel notes, this doesn't mean that people didn't extract from the land or mine the mountains, but that they did so with decorum, limiting how much they took and treating it as one might treat a gift. But the religions of kingdoms and empires split the world in two, with the spiritual realm of gods separate from and above the material realm, and with humans privileged to rule in that realm. This is human nature dualism, and in stark contrast to animist beliefs, it is the idea that humans are elevated above the rest of the living world. This notion is most apparent in the Abrahamic religions, where humans are made in the image of God and given stewardship over creation. This idea later served capitalism, which arose in Christian Europe, as it bolstered the belief that the earth could be considered a stock of natural resources for humans to parasitically exploit. Although dualistic ideas have existed in various forms elsewhere, the dualism that reshaped the globe is largely rooted in Abrahamic and especially European Christian intellectual traditions. Now, this idea wasn't strictly religious. Today considered one of the founders of the scientific method, 16th century philosopher Francis Bacon pushed a worldview that recast nature as something mechanistic, unruly, and feminine, something to be subdued by man's science. But the 17th century philosopher René Descartes was the figure responsible for the full-fledged formulation of this nature as object philosophy, as identified by Hickel in Less is More. Perhaps best known for his line, "I think, therefore I am," Descartes argued for a strict separation between mind and matter. This was the foundation of mind-body dualism. Humans alone were said to possess both minds, or souls, and bodies due to our connection to God. All other creatures were mere matter, automatons with no mind, spirit, or agency of any kind. So when Descartes was dissecting live animals, including his wife's dog, he could dismiss their cries as simple reflex. Descartes' dualism directly contradicted the animist belief in the continuity between humans and other beings. Humans became the only subjects, and nature was reduced to objects. This shift helped justify the enclosure of common land. Enclosure, in turn, helped people internalize the dualist view by cutting them off from the living world. Nature became property to be owned and extracted for human ends.
Not just owned and extracted, must be dominated. That's a very important part of this dualism relationship, the man-nature dualism, right? It's not simply that we are separate and above, right? That's definitely part of it, that we're separate and above, but the other really important aspect was they kind of glazed over it real fast. It's that nature is that which stands in opposition to the will of man. That's how that dualism is cast, that nature is separate from man, man is above it, and when we want to do things in the world, nature is the force that prevents us. So it's necessary for us to conquer and dominate nature. And the author that he referenced is actually mentioned in my Philosophy 101 textbook. My ethics textbook, because that author draws a correlation to the subjugation of nature and the subjugation of women. It's both of these are seen as not just man's right, but necessary. This is why women can't have reproductive choice over their own organs, why they can't make their own healthcare decisions, because it's necessary for man to dominate and make her, force her. And the her is in the context that the author talks about both nature, who is attributed to the feminine, and the feminine, which is attributed to the nature. Right? So the patriarchy is already playing hand in hand with the laying the foundations for exploitation and for capitalism.
As 18th century philosopher Immanuel Kant wrote, as far as non-humans are concerned, we have no direct duties. They are there merely as the means to an end. The end is man. And speaking of man, dualism could be used to justify the extraction of women's domestic labor, as they were cast as closer to nature. African and indigenous peoples were also cast as part of nature, objects rather than subjects, which
also necessary of being controlled, right?
The enslavement, dispossession, and exploitation that
and thank you for the follow.
Define the age of colonialism. As part of their so-called civilizing mission, colonizers sought to eradicate animist beliefs in colonized populations. Dualism would be instilled as the mental foundation for capitalist expansion. In Decolonizing the Mind, author Nyuji Watyongo noted, colonialism's most important area of domination was the mental universe of the colonized, the control, through culture, of how people perceive themselves and their relationship to the world. Before industrial capitalism, peasant life was marked by seasonal rhythms, community festivals, and slow-paced work. But European elites demanded a more disciplined workforce. If Descartes' dualism meant that the body could be treated as mere machinery, then it could be re-engineered for compliance and productivity. Grinding centuries of industrial labor and cultural conditioning would thus produce the ideal worker of today, one who is expected to suppress pleasure, spontaneity, and autonomy for the sake of production. And now, as Hickel observes, we are all heirs of dualist ontology. We can see it everywhere in the language we use about nature today. We routinely describe the living world as natural resources, as raw materials. Dualism runs so deep that it wriggles into our language even when we're trying to be more conscientious. The very notion of the environment presupposes that the living world is nothing more than a passive container, a backdrop against which the human story plays out. These are thought patterns I'm still trying to unlearn. The fall of animism and rise of dualism has coincided with our separation from our ecological kin, a wound it will take time and effort to repair. But the problem of dualism is not my only issue with religion, and although my critique centers in the mainstream Abrahamic faiths, especially Christianity, many of the concerns I'm about to discuss appear in other religions as well, though I know they may not appear in all. I'm speaking of the religious tendencies toward authority and superstition. As an anarchist, I'm opposed to all hierarchies and authorities, along with their justifying dogmas. That includes religious dogmas. I don't care if any system that privileges some individuals, groups, or institutions over others. That includes priests, churches, and temples, as well as certain castes or races. I don't believe in anyone having a right above others to command obedience and control resources. That includes supposedly God-ordained kings, slave masters, patriarchs, and capitalists. These concepts of hierarchy and authority are baked into so many of the religions at the center of people's lives today. The word hierarchy is literally derived from religion. People reference.
So, I think at this point, I can pull up. I thought it was going to be more dramatic. This. I think at this point, I can pull up this, and I think we're starting to see the connections here, right? Society has been indoctrinated with the idea that the masses need to be dependent on leaders, governing bodies, and managerial institutions to make all important decisions for the benefit of the community. This is the same conversation. We have been having the same conversation the whole time. The Victorian social regimentation, the values of divisive and unitary production spread throughout the empire, imposing cultural frameworks and belief systems throughout the colony. Yes. Yes. But also going back before the Victorian era. But also, yes. Exactly. Hold on, I can't figure out where my video went. There we go.
The word hierarchy is literally derived from religion. People reference celestial and ecclesiastical hierarchies as justifications for hierarchy being the natural order of things. Deference to authority often leads to accepting the unscientific or prejudiced views held by leaders or texts without scrutiny. I saw it all the time in the church I used to go to. And religion bears significant responsibility for the dominance of patriarchy over women and children around the world. But in my subjective experience, it has become a taboo among some anarchists to speak openly about this. Out of a genuinely noble desire to respect others and a sensitivity to the history of religious prejudice and persecution, some anarchists have gone completely silent on the subject. But for as long as there are religions that uphold these oppressive systems, there must be those brave enough to confront them directly. Ideas are not beyond reproach just because they're religious. I know there have always been religious anarchists. I'm aware of the Christian, Muslim, and Jewish anarchists. But the existence of those well-meaning yet marginal strains does not erase ongoing centuries of scriptural and actual authoritarianism. Now, don't get me wrong, I may not see eye to eye with the religious anarchisms, but I don't have an issue with them as long as they're truly committed to the struggle against authority. However, Zionism, jihadism, and Christian nationalism are not going to be defeated by pointing to a few charitable or liberatory scriptures as the real interpretation of the religion. These are movements which further fuse the existing connections between religion and politics. They should not be treated as solely religious or used as a justification for dehumanization, but a strictly political analysis is incomplete. Beyond authority and its consequences, there's another problem I see in many, though not all, religions: the way they cultivate superstition, which I find seriously harmful. Seeing supernatural explanations for everyday occurrences is not harmless. Strong commitment to belief in unprovable claims regarding gods, spirits, or angels can have an impact beyond one's personal religious practice. It can reinforce harmful cognitive biases and compel motivated reasoning, making people more likely to accept other claims that fit their religious political identity and more resistant to correction. It becomes easier to absorb partisan misinformation and dismiss the science around public health emergencies and climate change in favor of divine destinies, spiritual warfare, or an imminent end of the world. For some of the religious people I know, all this mess in the world was prophesied anyway, so there's nothing to be done. In some cases, religious identity can override scientific literacy, even among the highly educated. I'm against superstition because I believe in seeking the truth, even when it's uncomfortable, and even if it means that I can't find comfort in confident claims about the unknowable and not yet known. There was a time during my deconstruction from Christianity when I wanted to get involved with pre-Christian African spirituality, particularly the Orisha. I wanted to decolonize my mind and connect with the practices of my ancestors. But while there's a lot to appreciate about Ishise, I love learning about his cosmology, I can't make myself believe something just because I think it would be cool if it was true. The same goes for other animist beliefs. While I may appreciate some of their values and practices, I can't adopt their cosmology as truth. And yet, despite the problems I see in so many religions, I still understand the appeal.
Something I think is that I'll add. to that idea is that part of what appeals to me about paganism, the Celtic paganism that I practice, is right there. There is a large part of it that has to do with my actual cultural heritage, the ancestral blood, the ancestral memory, the connection to the land. But it's also something that for me is very useful and practical and helpful, because I'm not relying on paganism to give me answers about what I do in the world. I'm not relying on paganism to tell me what's right or wrong with regard to abortion, or who I should vote for, or whether I should feed other people, right? Those, for me, those answers are easy. I don't need help with that. What I need help with is having something that isn't the world of economic commerce that I must navigate in order to survive the world, finding some thing which exists outside of that to help me inform my identity, right? So for me, with paganism, the deities that make up the pantheon are all expressions of the way that one can be. And there are more or less advantageous responses or ways to be in a number of different ways or instances. So for me, there are certain archetypes that I can look up to that are helpful for me in trying to figure out the kind of me that I want to be in a world of this, right? So it's not, I'm not looking for something to give me truth. And I understand Andrewism's response, too. Like, as much as I would like that to be true, I can't just make myself believe that it's true. And I completely get that. And Jane, I would imagine you probably feel very much that same way, that you just know it, to you, it feels like you're just lying to yourself for no good reason. I completely get that. And you're not wrong. But for me, I think that for archetypes are helpful for me, not in really lying to myself, but for having some kind of goal to aspire to that I understand isn't itself a good goal, right? Because the deities that make up the pagan pantheon aren't all good. They're complicated and complex, and they change over time, and they experience the world in a very different way than this dualistic idea of good and evil, right? And this is what Christian religion and very many other religions do, is they have neat categories for good and neat categories for bad, and it's very clear who and what is in those categories. And this interferes with people's ability to operate in the world, because they have these preconceived, baked-in notions of good or bad, which inhibit their ability to actually think critically. This is going back to what Matt was talking about, right? When we are going through the world with our confirmation bias, it's helpful if we curb that with a little bit of scientific method. But for most people, it will never. They have these neat boxes, and when they encounter things in the world, they just pick them up and put them in the neat boxes. And then they never question the boxes, they never question the process, they never question how they came to understand those boxes in the first place. right? Because they have the answer, and the answer is baked into the religion, into the dualism of the religion. Because that's when Andrewism first started talking about the two different kinds of dualism. I was like, I cannot wait to make this even more complicated. Theological, philosophical, and ideological axioms, the narrative and transposition of patriarchy, and the marriage contract into the development of property rights, right? The development of the concept of the sin, of usury into an equitable global trading system, counterfeiting exploitative imperial hegemony. Right on. Welcome in, Nova Writer. It's good to see you. I hope you're doing well. And your side of the world. And I meant to ask, what time is it where you are right now? In New Zealand, because you're in New Zealand, right? One in the morning? Okay. I wanted to get an idea of... Oh, so it's... Okay. So my regular streaming time is probably not a bad time for you. It's evening, but it's not like late evening, because now it's... I usually don't stream quite this late. I'm usually wrapping up, by 5, but... Norway. You're in Norway, that's right. Right. I need to do a better job. I've been trying to track the viewers that watch the show, and I get a report of where all of they're from, and I'm trying to get an idea of when that is for everyone. So thank you, Nova Rider. I appreciate that. 1 in the morning is night. Yeah, I mean night. But for most people, that's actually a reasonable hour. Though I don't know. Is that late for you, Nova Rider? How do you feel about it? That's late for me. I'm in bed before 10 o'clock most days. I start getting ready for bed at like 9:30, at latest. But when I was younger, I used to stay up until 3 o'clock in the morning regularly. Even sometimes if I had work in the morning, 3 hours of sleep's fine. When I was young, I could do that stuff. It wasn't, but I can't do that now. I heard Norway started putting barcodes on their aircraft carriers. Think so they can scan the Navy in? Huh. You just get off work at 1 o'clock in the morning? Wow. Okay. Yeah, so not late for you relatively, if you're up. Students are good. I was gonna complain. You remember the last stream when I went on that long rant about that one student I have that I removed from the course? Well, we're going through the process to get them readmitted. Maybe. Right, the ball's in their court right now. They pleaded with me. They begged. They went to registration and jumped all through all the hoops there. So I emailed because I filled out all the forms that I needed to fill out. Now I've sent them to the student. The student has to sign the forms so that I can do the next. Send them off to all of the other people that need to do stuff, but that student will be readmitted into the course. Will be the student who has done almost no work in my 12-week semester will be readmitted in the 8th week of the 12-week semester. The student that has done 2 weeks of work out of the 12, that's why I removed them from the course, has begged me to readmit them into the 8th week of our 12-week course. I don't understand why you would want to do that to yourself. right? Like, take the W and sign up for the class again next semester, because now what's going to happen is you're going to fail the class and have to sign up for it again next semester anyways, and you've just made a whole bunch of useless work for yourself to get back into the class, made a whole bunch more work for me and all of my peers. You could have just taken the W, the withdrawal, that's what the W is, taken the withdrawal, and anyway, I've already said more than I planned to. Sometimes you have a lot longer runs than a man with a mustache. But I do have long runs than a man with a mustache. Longer runs than a man with a mustache. I wonder if there's something lost in translation there. If you're trying to make a joke, I'm sorry I didn't get it. It sounds like it was going to be funny. Back to the video. Yes, absolutely. It's time so that we could, because we're really close to the, we're already 2/3 of the way through the video, and we do want to wrap it up. Good. Thank you, Jane. I do. And I speak fast, Nova Rider, but I also take deliberate effort to slow down my speech. So, if it weren't for me trying to pump the brakes constantly on my patterns of speech, it would be probably difficult to follow me.
Religion meets social and psychological needs that the scientific method can never meet, like a sense of safety, belonging, meaning, and self-expression. Religion gives people ways to deal with the problems in their lives, like grief and adversity. According to Pew Research, in many countries, actively religious people are more likely than their less religious peers to describe themselves as very happy. This doesn't mean that the irreligious are incapable of happiness and can't find things like belonging and meaning outside of religion, but there's reason to believe that religion is a useful tool for filling the gaps in people's needs, especially in our increasingly alienated world. So what is to be done for people like me who cannot accept a supernatural cosmology but still see value in some of the principles and practices of religion? Can there be a religion without gods, spirits, or any other supernatural cosmology? For the latter question, the answer is a resounding yes. Religious humanism is one such approach that integrates humanist philosophy with the rites and activities typical of religion. Among Unitarian Universalists, you can find atheists that embrace a deeds not creeds approach to religion focused on furthering social good. But my interest in this topic was reignited by the work of Mark Green. As he has argued, there can be a religion beyond gods that brings it into alignment with science, while satiating the deep human yearnings that science cannot. It is possible to drain the bathwater from...
Okay, so this is where we want to go. With all of the, let's back it up a little bit. All of the precursor that we have, the cursory work that we have done up until now in this stream to build up to this video, talking about solutions. And I meant to bring this up earlier too. On some of our previous streams, we've talked about religion in more flexible ways, right? That almost anything, and really mostly everything, can be considered religious or a religion. And the video that we looked at was plastic pills, right? Was talking about the courtesy that we show each other in parking lots, and the way that we can figure out how to navigate through, as pedestrians and as drivers of cars, this complex system of driving through parking lots without running people over. That this is something, it's a kind of the fetishism. It's kind of a mystical fetishism even though we don't understand everybody or all of the situations where everybody else is going. We don't need all of the information. We don't need to know how it was designed, where the water is going to drain away, how the cars are supposed to be directed. All we have, right, we know how to follow the rules to stay within the parameters so that we can accomplish the thing of parking or unparking our vehicle. And the dedication that we pay to this and the attribution that we give to this feeds into this kind of overarching idea that has a kind of permanence in culture and society that is above and beyond the individuals. We contribute to creating this body of ideology that we all seem to figure out how to navigate magically. And this can be repurposed. And that's exactly where I would like to go with this. Well, I'll let the video finish out and think about more about what I want to say. I should go to Iran. It sounds like an amazing place to study. I hope that in the future Iran has universities, because I would not at all be opposed to studying in Iran.
Around the baby, as he says in the foreword to Godless Paganism, to feed both heart and head. Remember his definition of religion? It's a combination of cosmology, ideology, and practice. What is believed about the nature of the universe, what are the principles that guide behavior, and what are the activities that define the religion. Green's proposal is a form of religious naturalism that he calls atheopaganism. Let's take a look. Since atheopaganism is a naturalistic religious path, its cosmology is a basic scientific understanding of the universe, which evolves as we gain new knowledge through scientific discovery and analysis. Atheopaganism treats the natural world as all that exists, so there's no afterlife, before life, reincarnation, souls, or supernatural entities of any kind. There are 4 pillars within atheopaganism: life, beauty, truth, and love. Life and the systems which support it are sacred and must be protected. Beauty, which inspires joy and reflects creativity, is sacred and must be cultivated. Truth, which is necessary to acknowledge harms and right wrongs, is sacred and must be sustained. Love, which can drive our kindest impulses and uplift us in the darkness, is sacred and must be nurtured. Atheopaganism also has 13 principles, but I've grouped them into 3 simple ideas: knowing, relating, and doing. First, knowing. Through skepticism, curiosity, and perspective, myths and profound experiences can inspire us without literally being true. The metaphorical is not literal. The subjective is not objective. Knowledge is never finished, both of the world and other people.
Right. So remember the conversations that we've been having about positivism and the dangers of trying to understand the world in clear definitions or terms or logical, rational structures that always cohere to when we take our experiences of the world and formalize them into neat little categories, they stop being meaningful to us in the ways that they're supposed to. This is the problem. Months ago, I was complaining about the lack of authority in the idea of human rights. It should be the case that I say I have the right and other people around me understand and listen, and that there's at least a negotiation, some kind of interaction between me and my peers, me and the plurality in which I live, about negotiating what that right is and what that means. But that's not the reality we live in. We live in a world in which everything that is real with regard to our rights is an idea that's been put into a neat little box by the state. And every now and then, when people come to the courts, or people call the police, or when people appeal to the state to advocate for their injustices, every now and then the state pulls out that little box and goes, well, maybe you do or maybe you don't fit the criteria of us caring about you, right? Of the state protecting you, of the state, right? Because it probably won't. When you are kicked out of your house, the state is going to side with your landlord. When you are starving in the street, the state is going to side with the grocery store that's prosecuting you from stealing that from them. Because we have these neat little boxes of justice and rights, and none of those apply to real life. They're just abstract ideas in these positive attributions. And that positivity, rather than giving us anything concrete or any kind of capital T truth about the world, this betrays us. It alienates us from knowledge and from truth and from our own rights and from our societies and obviously from each other.
And sometimes the wisest response to the absurdity of life, including ourselves, is laughter. Second, relating. We practice reverence for the earth. Humility reminds us who we are in the context of humanity and the universe. We may have special knowledge, talents, or skills, but that doesn't make us better than anyone else. And in the grand scheme of things, we are temporary specks in the light of the cosmos. So we treat each other with inclusiveness and compassion, actively counteracting the human urge to other those who are not like us. Not every opinion should be treated equally, but every person should be treated as an equal. And we act with legacy in mind, knowing our choices become the inheritance of future generations. Finally, doing. We begin with gratitude as a skill we practice by noticing and appreciating what enriches our lives. With freedom comes responsibility to others, human and non-human.
And this is, I want to go back to our earlier conversation about confirmation bias, because it's not necessarily bad. When we begin to build a better world, when we begin to build the kind of tomorrow that we want to live in, what will be confirmed, right? These things will be part of our confirmation bias. That the good things that are useful.
With freedom comes responsibility to others, human and non-human. And freedom brings pleasure, which is good only when it causes no harm, respecting safety, consent, and mutual agreement. We carry ourselves with integrity, being honest about our mistakes and true to our word. And of course, there's the praxis principle, planting gardens, gathering in community, engaging in ritual, and creating art. So we've gone over the cosmology and ideology of Ethiopaganism. What remains is its practice. This includes rituals, rites of passage, and yearly observances.
So, one thing that I want to go ahead and thrust in now, before we get further in on this, is... Where did it go? Yes, here we go. Good. There we go. So, I was rambling on last stream about the literary world and the literary truth and this authority in that comes along with academia and the authority of the state, and all of these things are tied to the written word or the printed word, and I did a terrible job of explaining this, and I should have given you all the content warning for the flashing you with Hillary Clinton. This is Alice is the content creator. We've covered their stuff before on the stream. they have this work called the Post-Literate Society. That was the thing to which I was referring in last stream, and I'm going to copy and paste this in the chat so you all can reference this for yourself. I'm going to play just the first few minutes, a minute or two of this, because it's not going to take a lot to get the idea. And then I think we'll talk a little bit about, now that I think about it, maybe I'll let the other video finish, and then we'll end off with this little bit, and that'll segue into our next stream Wednesday. So we'll finish out the Andrewism, then I'll switch back over.
Ritual is an important part of the human experience. It's a way of processing important moments in our lives, experiencing interconnectedness, and living a more enriched life. Individually, rituals can put us in a ritual state, marked by intense present moment focus, heightened sensory awareness, reduced self-consciousness, and strong feelings of enjoyment and capability. But rituals can also offer the valuable experience of collective effervescence, the feeling of unity and joy that arises when people come together with common purpose, a feeling found in concerts, sporting events, and worship services alike. Creating an effective ritual is much like cooking. There's a science and an art to it, a framework and a fluidity. The ingredients of an effective ritual are symbolic actions, meaningful objects, and a clear structure and theme. Atheopaganism offers guidance, but the specifics are really up to you. You can create your own rituals. Ritual is grounded through sensory elements like candlelight, music, or scent that reinforce bodily awareness, immersion in the physical world, and appreciation for aesthetic beauty. Ritual works best when it sincerely engages the whole person through movement, dance, drumming, singing, chanting, and tactile experiences. Such experiences can achieve collective entrainment, an almost magical group experience of physical and emotional synchronicity through rhythm and repetition. In addition to more frequent group and solo practices, Atheopaganism suggests rituals for birth, coming of age, gender transition, graduation, moving, marriage, childbirth, divorce, elderhood, and death, depending on what's relevant to your life, of course. Many of these are beginnings and ends which rituals can help us process. For yearly observances, Atheopaganism is oriented around the seasons. For those of us living in the tropics, the 4 seasons are not quite as relevant, but there's room to adapt based on your biosphere. Atheopagan observances include the warm communal gatherings for winter solstice, celebrations of rain and preparations for the future for river rain, sowing the gardens and celebrating playfulness for high spring or vernal equinox, celebrating love and fertility for May Day, celebrating the longest day of the year for summer solstice, partaking in handicraft and physical work for summer's end, enjoying the bounty of the earth and of labor for harvest or autumnal equinox, and honoring the elderly, the ancestors, and the dead for Hallows. I don't currently have...
There's so much in this that reminds me of paganism. I just wanted to throw that out there.
Rituals like these in my life, but it's beautiful to think about how I might texture the year with more rites and observances in my calendar. And if this resonates with you, you don't need to adopt a whole new religion. You can start much smaller by creating a moment of ritual around something that already matters to you. Last thing to note, there is no room for hierarchy in Atheopagan practices. People may take on coordinating roles when the situation calls for it, but no one is elevated above another. There is no structure that enables abuse and protects abusers. No priests or priestesses, no gods, no masters. In the words of Green himself, just we critters, equal and humble under the gate.
Yeah, I guess the relationship was much more obvious than I was making it, huh? I guess the connection there is a little bit more odd. Yeah, thank you.
Of the sun, working together to make our way. In my view, Atheopaganism has a compelling combination of cosmology, ideology, and practice. I'm not at the point of calling myself Atheopagan or consider myself religious, but it's something that I continue to reflect on in the context I find myself in. I exist in a post-colonial reality that is still defined by racial and religious division, status oppression, patriarchal conditioning, and capitalist and imperialist exploitation. I see the climate catastrophe unfolding and the system in polycrisis. Perhaps these times call for a new animism, one that recognizes the interdependence of all life on Earth without compromising a scientific cosmology. A value system that will uproot the colonial, dualistic thinking that has thingified the Earth, as Amy Césaire observed, and made it ripe for exploitation. Humanity must reunite with the rest of the community of life through the practice of reciprocity, and discontinue the systems that see ourselves as separate from it. The authoritarianism and superstition of past religions may be supplanted by new paths, Ethiopian and otherwise, that embrace the values we hold dear and fulfill our yearnings for community. A new religion is not going to solve all the problems in the world. It may flavor a solarpunk world building with its values and rituals. It may even inspire individuals to gather and organize in a compatibly anarchist fashion. But I don't mean to suggest that we treat the plane of religion as the be-all and end-all. Religion is just one dimension of a multidimensional struggle. We cannot ignore the material conditions alongside the spiritual convictions that bind people to their faiths. Still, even as an intellectual exercise, this video has helped me to process my thoughts in a way that has given me greater clarity in how I understand and engage with the world. I hope it's done similarly for you. Whatever you believe, beliefs matter. They continue to shape our struggle for freedom in the 21st century. The path you choose is up to you. All power to all the people. Peace. Thanks for watching.
Excellent video. Andrewism always delivers, so I'm not surprised by that. I think what was tripping me up, Jane, is that I didn't expect it to be so pagan, right? In the atheopaganism, I didn't expect it to maintain so much of the structure and spirit I don't know why I was taken aback by that it was but I guess in some ways the way that I practice my paganism is already a kind of atheopaganism, because I'm not doing the practice of paganism because I believe that Cernunnos is going to accept my offering, right? That's not what I'm participating in. What I'm participating in is a ritual that reminds me about my connection to the season and to the animals that I depend on, right? And that there's this relationship and a connection and a way that I can go through the ceremony that helps me reflect and helps me remember this is what I'm supposed to care about, is this relationship that I have with my food and with the other creatures that are on this planet, which is, if you're doing stuff to Cernunnos, that's what you're doing, is you are getting in tune, not with the earth or with the water particularly, you're getting in tune with your brothers and sisters, the other animals that are also a part of the birth, right? So it's, yes, animals are still, or humans are still animals. With Cernunnos, Cernunnos is the first father. I don't know if you've been here. So Danu is the mother goddess who is the giver of life. And Danu existed in a place with the trees and the plants of the earth, but everything existed in stasis, which was fine. But Danu thought that there should be a point to things. And so she chose the oak, because it's exceptionally strong and exceptionally has great characteristics. She chose the oak, and from the oak she formed Cernunnos, who is the father of all creatures. And from Cernunnos is spawned humans and squirrels and monkeys, and literally every critter that crawls is all us included. right? We are just brothers and sisters, actually, in a Celtic pagan perspective. That we are brothers and sisters to the animals of the forest. And we don't get any special hierarchy. We don't get a special place. That's for Cernunnos, right? The first, and Danu, the Great Mother, right? Which is just water. So that's. But anyway, but great video. Oh, the other thing, that's what, for those of you who, I kept, did this with my fingers to help me remember that I wanted to tie something in too. The elements of this video are good for you. They're helpful for whoever you, all of you individually. But all of the lessons are also good systemically, and we should think about them in an expanded way. Prefiguration isn't just something you do to yourself. It involves you working with the others, right? For your prefigurative process, it requires you to work with others so that you can organize, because that's how you get freedom. Real freedom is by working with other humans so that you can grow your own food and have space that you don't have to pay rent, and you can manage your own time without having to worry about a boss breathing down your neck. That requires organization with other people. For you to accomplish success prefiguratively in getting any kind of freedom requires the others, right? And we should think about prefiguration as something that we do to this thing, but it also is something that requires an expanded viewpoint. I can't solve these problems by myself as an atom divorced from all of the things materially around me. And we can think about the lessons from this video in the same kinds of way. If these elements are beneficial for you, and they are or can be, then they would also be good for your communities and for how you think about organizing your communities and how you build each other up, right? These things should be integral, not just in your own personal prefigurative toolkit there, yes, but also present in how you engage with the world, how you engage with your others, with the plurality that we require for us to achieve any kind of real freedom. Good. Finish that video up, and now I want to go back to this one briefly, and we don't want to have to spend a lot of time on it. So, at the very beginning of the Andrewism video, I paused at that point where the prevailing systemic religions or beliefs, and I would like to expand that idea up to ideology in general, the state and institutions like policing and democracy and our, right, not just religions, but religions depend on the authority of text, and they depend on the authority of people, individuals. And this is true for not just the religions, Christianity, it's true literally for the state and for the police and for everything else. And that sometimes I have too many ideas and I can't, just vomit them out, and I don't know how to order them. Right, those authorities depend on literature. They depend on I'll just play the video. How about that? I'll try and figure out how I'm going to phrase this, but I'll let Alice play, and then we'll figure it out.
Hillary Clinton said this.
Sorry.
A few days ago, Hillary Clinton said this.
Well-educated young people, where were they getting their information? From social media, particularly TikTok. And what they were being told on social media was not just one-sided, it was pure propaganda.
And before that, former Obama speechwriter Sarah Hersvitz said this.
Social media is now our source of media. The media you got in America was American media, and it was pretty mainstream. It's also this increasingly post-literate media, less and less text, more and more videos. TikTok just smashing our young people's brains, video of carnage in Gaza.
Those interventions have been criticized on many levels, and today I want to focus on this notion here.
It's also this increasingly post-literate media.
The post-literate society. If you follow the news, if you're on social media, you know that there is real concern around the decline of readership, the decline of literacy skills. Governments and institutions are investing a lot of money to make sure kids can read, and the results are mid. On the other hand, there is a lot of discourse around young people's use of social media and the impact it has on their mental health, but also on their ability to focus, to learn, and read. Once again, an increasing number of governments are reacting to this by implementing measures, programs, or laws meant to prevent kids and teenagers from using their phones at school or at specific time during the day. Now, this is coherent with what psychologist Jonathan Haidt has been pushing.
Right, before we get too into because we're just touching on the ideas. We don't need to get into the sauce. That was really funny, Matt. Oh, no worries. Kaimatara, welcome back. It's good to see you. I mean, you got a life. I understand. I'm never going to be upset at any of you because you've got other things to do. Oh my gods, the whole thing. but that's all right. We got through the Andrewism video finally. Right, so the concern for children's mental health, and this is part of what the video is going to be talking about. The concern for children's mental health really is just a cover. It's just an excuse to demonize non-literacy. Not, and there's, how to make this distinction. So, critical literacy is the ability to receive information and then to discern whether the information you've been given is credible or not. And that's not what I'm talking about. We're talking about the legitimacy of literacy itself. And maybe I should just let the video play a little bit more, actually, because you need that. That's right. Well, I'll let Alice get through it. Hold on.
For decades now. He has written The Anxious Generation and is a big proponent of reducing phone use among younger people. I made a video about him about a year ago, I think, maybe. I'm quite critical of his work, and it's not just me. There's a group of academics and researchers who are very critical of the validity of his research. I dived into that academic debate in the video I just mentioned. You can watch that later, but for now, let's stick to our topic of the day, the post-literate society. The post-literate society, as Sarah Hersvitz implies in her speech, and as we've just explained, mobilizes two types of discourse. The discourse on the decline of literacy and the discourse on social media use. Post-literate means after-lettered, so basically it signals a transition from a society where text is the dominant way people create, share, or understand information, to a society where it has been replaced by other modes of communication. And we can't help but notice that there is a negative connotation.
We don't even need to worry about that connotation. We just got what we needed, right? If we're thinking about the credibility and authority of religions, the authority and credibility of the state, of police, of the law, it depends on a it's positivism. What it is positivism. It's not just literacy, it's a certain kind of literacy. It's a certain kind of literacy that has been handed down to us and coheres with the tools that the masters have given us to build tomorrow. This is why there's such a panic about kids being able to access TikTok and getting access to social media, and that they're using language that their parents don't understand. It's because the way the system is designed is that control must be maintained all the time about what is true, what is right, what is credible, what is valuable, what is religion, right? These things need that kind of legitimacy, and that legitimacy for all, as long as states have existed, needs some kind of mechanism to enforce that. We don't have gods anymore to blame divine what's it called? Divine, when the king is chosen by the god, whatever that is. But we don't have gods to rely on anymore to legitimize the leaders. What we rely on is the printed word that has persisted. And now that we have new mechanisms of information exchange, and those mechanisms of information exchange are proving to be far superior than the literate system that the system has depended on for all of this time. That's why there's so much moral panic around kids on TikTok and kids on the internet and kids with access to a new form of technology, a new form of communicating ideas that has surpassed post-literate. We live in a post-literate society now, and the literate society that has been maintaining the facade of authority and legitimacy of states and police and laws it's becoming clear that it's bullshit. It's becoming clear that it's just words on a piece of paper over there on that fucking document that doesn't stop this country from blowing up my universities, that doesn't stop this other country from bombing my bridges, right? All of the words, lending all of the legitimacy to all of our states is clearly bullshit. Because the President of the United States is just not giving a shit about any word that's ever been written in the last 500-600 years, right? Welcome in. There are no third spaces anymore. Right. There are no third spaces anymore. Is another important thing that that is interfering with our ability to work together. Oh, Scary Library, a streamer? Nice, okay. Alright, everybody give Scary Library a follow. How do I can just do that here, huh? Hey, there we go, good. Welcome in. If you're a friend of Matt's, you're a friend of mine. Good. Well, I mean, we're wrapping up now. That is the people's mod. That is so true. Out there doing the real hard work, right? You know, mod love. Thank you, Matt, for being there. Skibidi Riz, Yacht, Sigma, Et, yeah, referring to the sign language that parents don't understand. And that's it terrifies parents, right? This has always terrified parents. Well, I mean, in my conception of always, going back, however, anyways, my Western conception of always is actually pretty limited in the scan of things. But the parents have always been concerned about their children being able to get access to information that those parents couldn't control. And really, we've got, as a society, we need to understand that that's fucking bad. That is always bad. There's no reason for us to be insulating our children from the realities of the fucking world. And if you feel the need to insulate your children from the realities of the world, then maybe you should be more concerned about making the world less fucked up, so that you can just tell your kids normal stuff instead of that we have to genocide brown kids in another country because the president has lost his mind. Right? I understand that that's a conversation that you don't want to have with your children. Stop supporting the fucking pedophile rapist who is bombing other nations. Do something about it. If you don't, right? If you don't want your kids exposed to all of the sex all over the internet, then maybe you should actually be more concerned about that. In this liberal society that lets people just put pornography everywhere all of the time with nonstop, right? That maybe you should be more concerned about making the world the less shitty place so that you don't have to protect children from the realities of it. Because those children need to know how to navigate the world. And when you insulate them from the realities of rape culture, when you insulate them from the realities of racism, when you insulate them from the realities of white supremacy, you are doing them a disservice. You are failing to do your job as a parent to prepare your child to deal with a world that has rape and racism in it. You're not protecting them. You're setting them up for failure. Always, all the time. Now, I might feel a little bit passionate about this. 50 people were shot in Chicago? Oh, okay. Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah. Should we tell our children? Right. I mean, yes. And yes, we should tell our children. And that's my going back to the point. If you think that it's bad to tell your children about the things that are going on, maybe take a more proactive role in the things that are going on. And simply banning guns doesn't matter, right? That's obviously not the way to solve the problem of people murdering each other in the streets, right? That's not the way. That's not a solution. That's not even reasonable. Yeah, it doesn't do any good for guns to be illegal in Chicago if you can go right across the border and still buy them anyway. And this is speaking about our liberal society. The gun manufacturers literally know this and supply the areas around the borders of states where guns are illegal. Right? Gun manufacturers know this. And then they flood those areas with as much guns as they possibly can. on purpose. And our liberal laws allow people to make profit off of the murder of other people. Right? And that's what we should be concerned about. Not whether we tell our children about 50 people being murdered. If they ask you, own up to it. We live in a society of murderers. Your child needs to be prepared for that because they're going to get shot at in school. They need to know that information. They live in a world where people have guns all of the time, insulating them, and you're not protecting them. You're setting them up for failure. And they're going to find out anyway. Jane, they're going to find out anyway, right? I mean, that's absolutely right. You might as well, and this is the thing with, also tell them about pedophiles. Right? This is something else that I... Okay, so, when I was a child, if somebody had explained to me, right, rather than just saying, if somebody offers you candy, you shouldn't get in their van, right? I don't actually know what, as a 5-year-old me doesn't have any idea what to do with that information. Really, if you explain to me that there are other people out there who will look at me and want to do harm to me because of the way that I look, that's something that I can understand even as a fucking 5-year-old. And you don't have to be explicit. You don't have to show them pornography. You just have to prepare your children for the reality of reality, which is your job as a fucking parent, not to pretend that everything's fine, not to insulate them from the realities of the real world that sets them up for failure. And that's kind of what happens in a lot of cases with, and I'm going to get a little bit out of my wheelhouse here, and I don't have any kind of evidence to back this up or any kind of statistics, so I might be talking completely out of my ass. But something that I notice or seem to notice with teenagers is that when or even before then, they find out anyway about sex. They find out about there being more than 2 genders. They find out about all of that stuff. And then they have no guidance, no compass, no roadmap, no advice, no wisdom from their parents to help them navigate the complicated shit that is sexuality and gender. Just thrust out into the world as though they're... I mean, it's no wonder so many teenagers and young adults find themselves in states of identity crisis. Their parents won't help them. Flat out refuse to give them any information or any guidance, or they just protect and pretend and insulate, and that doesn't help anybody. That actually enables the abusers. Going back to tell them about the existence of pedophiles. When you don't tell your children about the existence of pedophiles, you are making them easy victims for pedophiles. Obviously! Right? Like, that's such an easy 1 + 2 = fucking 3 thing. Yeah. Anyway. I'm over here screaming, and I can hear Jane screaming too. As loud as Jane is typing it, I can hear Jane screaming the same shit too. I hear you. They don't care about the 100 million Africans Europe murdered, just the Christians that support their political agenda. Yeah. Oh, okay, that's gotcha. You're talking more about that. Yeah, I think they left. That they weren't feeling the vibe, Matt. I think they weren't feeling the vibe and decided to dip. Which is okay. I'm not for everyone. That's okay. I'm not everybody's cup of tea. That's cool. Good. You know, good. It works itself out. Anyway, as much as I have enjoyed ranting and screaming, I am ready to wrap up. This was a long stream. I love it. This was a good one. I got started late, but streamed long, and it was a good. We got through all of the stuff that I wanted to, all of the high priority stuff. There's of course a whole lot more that we still have on the back burner. That, right? I still have the other video that Jane put in there about religion that we'll talk about next time. I think I will also pull up another video from No Nonsense Atheism that I had backlogged. I mentioned it on last stream that they have other stuff that I've been interested in, and I just haven't had the opportunity to deep dive into it yet. And so we might do some of that too. And I've got some other things planned that I haven't touched base on yet, so I'll just leave that there. What a great stream. I really enjoy when I end stream, like come to the end of stream at full yell. Something about that is just kind of satisfying. Okay, let's see what we got here. Okay, we got some good options. Lots of good options, actually. Okay, so absolutely. And thank you for coming in. I'll be sure and check you out. Check out your stream later. Thanks for stopping by. It was good to see you. And you know, you came in at the end, but hopefully you got a good idea of the kind of vibes we got. We hate the police and we hate the state. We also hate authoritarians who call themselves leftists, because fuck them too. But good. Then I'm good. I can't wait to see your stream. Nice to meet you. Let's go in. This is somebody that I haven't seen streaming in a while. And I haven't watched any of their streams in, I think, more than a year, but I used to watch them back in the day. And they've got some takes that I like. So let's go hang out with Cinemarxism. A Cinemarxist. Yeah. Yeah. Fuck all authoritarians wearing "I'm a good lefty." And they do it. They wear it like a uniform, which is one of the things that that I talk about a little bit. They just put on the uniform whenever it's convenient, whenever they think it's going to give them more views. And then they don't have to do anything materially about it. It's really easy to just put on the leftist uniform. You don't even have to do any work. But then it's just a uniform, and then you're just a poser. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. I'm sorry you missed so much of Akai Matara. I hope that you can get caught up in the VOD. And work happens, it's okay. Jane, thank you so much for helping me remember to start YouTube and to get back to the video and to stay on task. I really appreciate all of your help. Matt, again, thank you for all of your mod work and being here, all of your support. And thank you, everybody else who I haven't mentioned, because we can't have these awesome conversations without people to talk with too. So thank you.